Hey guys, how's it going? This is Katie. I'm with the University Innovation Fellows Program, and I'm here with three lovely folks this afternoon.
I'm Laurie. I'm also with UIF, and I'm excited to chat about UIfresh.
I'm Megan. I'm a UIF at Michigan Tech, and yeah, I'm just as excited as Laurie.
I'm Asya. I go to the Colorado School of Mines, and I'm a University Innovation Fellow here. And I am just excited as the other two and the other three, I guess.
Nice. So today, thanks for joining us because we want to talk about your motivations behind UIfresh, which is a community about engaging first years in innovation and entrepreneurship and what you guys have been doing at both of your campuses. So why don't we just kick the conversation off with why you got involved and what even motivated you to start this initiative at your school?
Yeah, so I guess I'll go first. So the original UIfresh started with this email from Humera, and I remember I was sitting at a hockey game when I got the email, and I saw it, and we had talked about, as UIFs on our campus, getting involved with first years, as a few of us were orientation team leaders. And so I got the email and I immediately texted them. I'm like, guys, I can't do anything, but can we make this happen? And so I got back to Michigan Tech, and I remember running around campus and getting it all signed and then getting the okay. Orientation was super excited about it. They needed something to fill a time slot, so it worked out well. And I just finished my first year, so I was really excited about being a part of something that impacted students that were very close to my age range.
Yeah, kind of to build off of that, it was a very similar story for me, and Megan was actually part of the reason that I got interested in it. Personally, my freshman year was incredible, like to get to be a part of what I got to be a part of because of UIF. My RA, Corey Brew, was actually the first fellow at Mines, and he made our freshman experience so meaningful. And I realized that when you start with such a meaningful first year experience, you can really build off of that. And then getting to come to the national meetup and hearing Megan's Ignite on UIfresh and sort of how there's already something in place that we could build off of and we could implement here at Mines. It's actually a really funny story. Right after the national meetup, we were sitting in the airport getting ready to come back to Colorado, and all the fellows were sitting there, and we were like, how are we going to implement this? And we literally came up with all the ways, like all the people we're going to talk to and all the support we're going to get, and it was the most exciting thing. And I guess I just really realized how important and meaningful it was for me to start college with such a great community and so many inspirations that build off of that and do that for the future generations as well would be awesome. So that's why I got into UIfresh.
I think it's really cool that both of you were coming out of your first year, right? And saying, oh, I'm going to get involved in this initiative to engage first years. So how did you see that experience change when you got involved in organizing it for other first years versus your own first year experience?
Yeah, I guess the biggest piece for me was that when we got into actually organizing it, we stepped back and did some like empathy of what do first years actually want to know about innovation and entrepreneurship on campus. And so then my whole team kind of just turned to me and was like, all right, so you're on the spot now. And so I had to like think back to when I first got to Michigan Tech. And the biggest thing was I was always involved with creativity growing up. And so I wanted to know where I could go to get involved. And UIF just kind of happened for me. But the biggest piece for me was I wanted to make sure it happened for other students. And so we got to think of how can we engage students that's fun and interesting. And I knew what to say because I had just gone through orientation in only a year. But then as well as myself and one of the other teammates, like I said, we were orientation team leaders. So we kind of had an idea of what the schedule was like and how the students are always sitting down. So our biggest piece was we need to get the students up and moving. So that was our first step.
Yeah, like Megan said, empathy is a really, really huge part of that. And I think when you're on the first year side of that, you don't think about all the logistics and all the planning and the whys behind certain things. It's like really easy to just complain about certain things, like the days are long and all that. But when you're on the planning side of it, it's so important to empathize and think back to like my own first year experience and why certain things were the way they were and how they felt. And I know like sitting with faculty now and planning like our innovation week and stuff like that, it feels kind of uncomfortable at first to be the only student in the room and stand up and say, hey, that's actually like, let's do it like this instead. They'll like this better instead. But it's so empowering and to like be the student in the room and the one that's standing up and saying, hey, this is a better way to do this, that maybe they hadn't thought of yet. So it's nice to have sort of both sides of the story. And I think it's really important because then, like Megan said, you can empathize a lot better with the people on the other end.
I would love to hear a little more about how you empathized with the first year students, especially thinking about it. So if someone wants to get involved in UIfresh and they're a faculty member or a senior, thinking about how they might get back in touch with the freshman experience. So like, how did you empathize, and how do you recommend that others do it?
Yeah, for us,
I know.
You go ahead, Asya. Oh.
I know for us, we have a lot of like events where we're connecting all of those aspects. A lot of like the mingling events, just because when you have a lot more formal events, we realize that students, one, don't want to participate in those as much. They don't want to have to get dressed up and be formal, put in extra time in their schedule. Like students are really, really busy. And we realize that as students that like there's certain events we don't go to because we're so busy. But when it's a lot less formal and it's just like eating food and like talking to faculty and upperclassmen, then you're more likely to go. So that was just like one type of way that we empathize with the students as well as the faculty. So planning those mingling events where they could get to know each other and have those conversations, but on a much less formal and more casual way.
Yeah, for us, we run UIfresh as just students in charge of it. So it's our UIF team that's in charge. And so we've been lucky enough that those of us that are working on UIfresh actually have gone through freshman orientation and know what it's like to sit there and listen to everything, as well as go to your meetings and all the activities at night. So we all had a general idea of what orientation looked like. We also had the benefit of now quite a few of us have actually been a part of orientation staff. And so we know both sides of it and have this close relationship with orientation. And they kind of just let us do us because they trust us and what we've found. So
we had a very similar experience last year with orientation, where they just gave us a block of time and they said you can do whatever needs to be done in that block of time. So I think it's coming down to building that relationship and building that trust between the different organizations and the faculty to have that ability to do whatever needs to be done and not necessarily have so much oversight on every event. I know one thing that's very important, it's very easy to get lost in like, oh, well, we've been through all this training, so we know what's best. And that's for every like aspect. So like whether that's the faculty, whether that's the people planning orientation, or whether it's the fellows or the students, it's, I think, so important to keep an open mind about everything and know that like no one group or no one person knows exactly what's best in every situation, and to just like always keep listening and reiterating and making the process better as you go along.
You guys were talking a lot about, being on both sides of like being the first year and then being on the organizing side and then getting into your orientation weeks, and you mentioned that both of you, like original organizers, just had this trust built into you, and saying, okay, here's a chunk of time, go ahead and do that. I'm wondering if you can talk about, if you can recall like how that trust was built, or sort of how you had that reputation for somebody to just say, here's an hour and a half or 3 hours, go, you can do whatever you want. And also like, what are some struggles that you also saw in organizing this and being motivated to do it, if you had any?
Yeah, so for us, the biggest thing was that, like I mentioned earlier, but people on Facebook Live wouldn't know this, we had orientation team leaders on our team planning UIfresh. And so we already had somewhat of a relationship with the staff in orientation because we were their employees as well. So when we brought up the idea of what we were thinking, the first year there was a lot more of emailing back and forth. They had just gotten a brand new director of orientation. So he was kind of unfamiliar with a lot of things as well. And so I was here during the summer before our first UIfresh event at Michigan Tech, and I constantly was meeting with him. I was sending him emails of all our updates, but he kind of just let us do what we thought was best. And then after the first year, we had actual meetings about feedback, and then went into the second year with little to no communication. And then now we're in our third year, and I think I've sent 2 emails to him about the planning process. So he's kind of let it be us being the ones in charge. So.
Yeah, for us it was a little bit different, where we didn't really have any relation to the people planning orientation or any of the freshman experiences outside of residence life. But we did have a lot of relationships with other important faculty on campus and other key supporters. So whether that was the president, or whether that was all of our Pathways team, or just our mentors and our sponsors, we had a lot of those relationships already built. So by having everyone sign a letter of support saying, hey, we trust these people, we have a relationship with these people, and we give them our support to continue with this program, it kind of gave us something to start with. And then Trevor and I, so Trevor is another University Innovation Fellow for anyone that hasn't met him. He and I we just sent an email to the 2 people that are in charge of our orientation in our freshman, the first week experience. We sent an email to the 2 of them and asked to meet. And when we met with them, we showed them the letter of support, showed them that we have all these people's trust already. So we have something built, even though it may not necessarily be with them. And then we went on to make just a super informal PowerPoint presentation about who we are and why they should trust us as well. And so then we went on about our experience as University Innovation Fellows, other projects that we've worked on, showed them so many pictures from the national meetup in Silicon Valley, and the training that we've got and the experiences that we've had. And you could tell that this was building excitement and motivation in them as well, that this was going to be something new. This was going to be something they hadn't done before. So sort of creating that empathetic relationship with them as well, where they're feeling it. They're getting excited for us, even though it's not they're not going to be as big of a part in planning that process. Just having it be a part of the process, they were getting excited too. So after that, they were all right, we're in, we bought into it. What are your ideas? And then we went into explaining what we wanted to do and building that schedule around what time do we have to do what we need to do. So then to sort of continue building that relationship, we have peer mentors here, and they're students that work in groups with the freshmen and also teach the freshman success seminar class. And they work with the 2 women that are in charge of orientation. And after we got to that point, then we had the ability to train those peer mentors as well to continue that in their classes and in all the group events that they'll be doing. So not only did they give us that trust with that time period in orientation, but also to train their employees basically to continue doing the same thing. So it ended up being a really successful first time at Mines, and we're hoping to keep building off of that.
It just, hearing what you're both saying, it just goes to show you that it really proves that having getting supporters and getting trust and enthusiasm takes work, but it's the end result is always really worth it. If you get them kind of on your side and excited early on, they're going to be great supporters for you. So thank you for sharing that. That's really helpful. And I'm wondering, at this point, do you think both of you could give a high-level overview of what your UIfresh activities were now that we've been talking about the motivation and the support, to share what you've done as part of UIfresh?
Yeah. To change it up, Asya, do you want to go first?
Sure, I'll go first. So we started with one freshman orientation. So the first 3 days of right when the freshmen move in, the first year students, I should say, the first year students move in, and the first 3 days are just orientation events. And that usually is like name games and like sexual assault training and mental health training and all that great stuff that they have to go through. But what we basically did was we had a 2-hour period where we got to do anything we wanted. And in those 2-hour period, we started out with really fun games that we played actually during the national meetup. So whether that was the rock, paper, scissors, or like the 1, 2, 3, and like the ta-da! So starting out with like those fun little activities that are meant to get them up and moving and excited and just like hyped up for the rest of the activities. So we started with those, and then it kind of progressed towards a little bit more group work and group activities. So then we did the changing your stereotypes and your inferences, like that game. So listing out stereotypes of a certain topic and then flipping your assumptions, and then talking about how we can implement those flipped assumptions and how things would be better if we implemented some of those flipped assumptions. So they really enjoyed that game. And I know personally, like at the end of last year, I was walking through one of our buildings that our new maker space is in, and there were people doing that in there. And I was like, oh my gosh, we did that. That is so cool. So that was another game we did. And then finally doing some really rough prototyping activities where they actually have objects and they prototype it. So like the ice cream, and I don't remember the specific second prototyping activity we did, but actually it was one that we did at William Jewell. It was where you come up with like the three adjective plus nouns, and then you pick one of them and you like make it. So that was another one we did, and they had a lot of fun with that one. Yeah, it was great. And then we followed that through by continuing those activities in their freshman seminar class. So keeping that going. And I know personally, when I was a freshman seminar was like, it was, you just show up to get the grade. Like it was, I don't want to be here. And so it was kind of nice to have a little bit of that more interactive aspect in it. And then in addition to all that, sorry, I keep talking. In addition to all that, we also had tours of all of our new maker spaces and innovation spaces on campus, because we keep getting more and more and more as the fellows are being more and more active on campus. So having tours of those spaces so people actually know, one, what they need to do to gain access to those spaces, which spaces they already have 24-hour access to, and what they can use the spaces for. So just having them be aware of that is awesome. So that's been incredible. And then giving them the ability to train for that right off the bat, just to keep it exciting, keep the momentum going, I think is very important. It's been nice. And then finally, the last part of all of that is to obtain that feedback of what went well, what didn't go well on all sides of it, the students, the fellows, and the faculty, in order to fix it for the next year.
Yeah, so at Michigan Tech, we're on year 3 of UIfresh. Crazy to think that we're already here. But so we started year 1. Our orientation is a week long here at Michigan Tech. And the first year they gave us a whole day So it was the Wednesday of orientation where we had 30-minute sessions running all day that every student would be required to go through. So we had about 100 students at a time, and we ran just like a quick 30-minute design thinking exercise all around the topic of it's cold in Houghton in the winter, and what problems do you see arise with that, and how do we fix it? So we had anything from let's just move campus to Florida and solve that problem all right there, or let's build a ski lift so we don't have to walk up the hill to our SDC. So we had a little bit of everything that came out of that. The students were really engaged in the activity, and we got feedback. But one of the biggest things was there wasn't enough time. We felt like we were rushing the students. It was this basically assembly line where we had the next 100 students outside the building, and as we were having the last group leave outside one door, the next group was coming in the other door, and it was just fast paced all day. I slept a lot that night. But then going into year 2, we asked if it was possible to have more time, and the only way we could possibly do that was to actually get 2 locations. And so they reserved 2 locations on campus for us to run this newer session that we'd come up with. And it was an hour-long design thinking exercise where we introduced the whole idea of doing your mission versus your major. And so we had one of our fellows, Adam, create this really cool audio clip similar to the Stanford 2020 audio clip, and about Michigan Tech and the history of Michigan Tech. And so we played that to get them in the mindset, and then they started brainstorming what their team's mission would be in, I don't remember what year it was, but I think it was like 2025. It was 5 years after they graduate college. And so we got them thinking that we had someone wanted to make an elevator that went to space, and just some cool ideas came out of it. And then at the end, to gain feedback from the students, because we noticed we didn't get that the year before, we did a giant sticky note wall of I like, I wish, I wonder. So 4,000 some sticky notes later of me inputting into Google Drive gave us all the feedback we needed for the next year. And as we headed into this year 3 of planning UIfresh, we found out that we didn't get our time slot on the day, so we couldn't run another workshop. And so our team had to take a step back and say, okay, what can we still do? How can we still get involved? So we're running a scavenger hunt on campus of the innovation and entrepreneurial resources, and it will end in our makerspace with some sort of challenge. There'll be prizes and stuff. So this year it's optional. It's not required for all students, but we're still hoping that we get good interactions with students that are really looking for these resources on campus. And so in a week, that'll be happening.
Nice. And you can follow Magann on Instagram, because she'll be taking over the UI Fellows handle as she orchestrates this scavenger hunt across campus. I'm excited that instead of just saying, okay, we're out this year, let's just plan for next year, that you guys are still trying to figure out how to do something. And I think that sounds like a lot of fun. I wonder, Magann, so Asya tied in a little bit about how they were continuing this through like different tours of spaces and like in their freshman seminar. Do you have any ideas about how you might do that at Michigan Tech, or is it something that you're thinking about? It might not be.
Yeah, so that was one of the biggest things of our first 2 years, is that we didn't really have a follow-up. We had like, follow us on social media, like watch out for our events. But our makerspace opened in October of last year, so after UIfresh. And so now we can send students there as like a hub of a resource. And so that's why we're having them end here in the makerspace, as like, you can come down here. It's free for you to use. We're open. Come hang out. We're going to get some comfy new couches. So we're really excited that we want to get more involved. And we've actually been asked by first year engineering if they can come use this space for their classes, and to have the students, they have to actually make prototypes in first year engineering, and they're going to encourage all of their students to come here. One of the classes asked if they could put their setup for testing here, and so we're really trying to keep engaged with the students because we saw that that was an issue from previous years.
It's incredible how much you can do if you have a space for it. Like with our 2 new maker spaces as well, we have like classes being taught in them, training sessions being taught in them, like club meetings being hosted there. And anytime you walk past it, it's like a big open glass space, so you can see students just like physically in there meeting with their groups and like putting things together using like the laser cutter or the vinyl cutter. That's what I meant to say. And like the heat press and just like all the equipment that's in there. It's incredible what you can do when you have a space that's so like inspiring and really does make you want to like be there.
Yeah. That's cool. That's cool that it's glass walls. And so if you just happen to be walking by, you can see like what's happening.
The one in the middle of campus is like glass walls. And then the one that is within like right next to our wood shop is like super covered up, but they painted it like super bright and exciting, which is nice. And then all of our first year epics, which is like our design process course that everyone has to take, it hosted in that building as well. So they get to be there already, which is nice.
Yeah, ours is like in the basement of our student union, so it's kind of like hidden. It's the hidden gem on campus. And so that's why we're trying to get the students down here and the scavenger hunt ending here, just so they know where it is, first of all. But then since they know it's here, they can come back.
Nice. I have a couple last questions for you, but both of you talked a lot about feedback as a part of like this whole process. And especially for, incoming fellows or fellows that are going to be heading into training and haven't been to a Silicon Valley meetup yet. Can you talk to like the importance of getting feedback and like reiterating on what you do every year?
Yeah, so for us, the biggest piece about feedback, the biggest importance is that at the end of the day, we're so tired that we might not write down our thoughts, right? Or we might sit there and be like, oh, that was great, and not have caught the little things that because we're running it all, we don't see. And so we have progressed to gaining feedback from the students so that we can hear what they're actually saying rather than, oh, like I saw this one table and they were loving it, but there could have been a table in the back corner of the room that I didn't see that maybe wasn't enjoying the activity. And then we also worked closely with our orientation staff. And so they were giving me feedback last year as I was working with them as an orientation team leader. So they felt comfortable enough to come up to me and say, hey, I noticed this, maybe think about it for next year. And so we're really trying to open that conversation. So it's open feedback, not us saying, here's a few questions. Can you fill this out real quick for us? But so it's more like they're not afraid to tell us what went wrong, right? Because it's something that we can learn from, and we're not going to take it that, oh, they hated it. And I mean, maybe they did, but that's something that will help us learn for the future.
Yeah. Well, and I also hope that you find a way to collect 4,000 Post-it notes of feedback in a non-manual way. So maybe there's been some technological advancements this year.
Magann, I also just want to like think about, the fact that when you take feedback that they can then see that feedback implemented in the future, I think is really important too, because it shows that you take their feedback seriously. So when you ask people for something and then they see the result of that, they're more likely to continue giving you honest feedback. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, kind of to build off of what Magann said, as much as we can try to empathize with everyone, there are experiences and knowledge that we don't have that others do. Wow, just choked on my words. That others do. And you can't get that unless you specifically ask for it sometimes. So it's important to take that into consideration.
One question I was curious about was how both of you maintain your motivation to keep doing this. As Magann said, this is her third year. So, and Asya, this is your second year doing UIfresh work?
Second and a half.
And second and a half.
Second and a
Yeah.
half.
So, what keeps you going, and what keeps you wanting to engage with first year students?
For me, the biggest piece was that I looked for something like this my first year. And so now that I have the opportunity to engage with students and show them these resources right away is what motivates me. It's kind of that like paying it forward deal. As well as it's if one student tells me they were impacted by it, then I'm like, okay, then it served its purpose, right? So we have maker coaches that say, oh, I remember our UIfresh event. He's actually going to be going through training as a fellow. And he came up to me during one of our info sessions and he's like, you're the one that led that UIfresh event, right? Like, that's how I recognize
So
this
cool.
and want to get involved. I was like, oh yeah, that's awesome. So just like hearing that keeps me motivated because it means that somebody's listening. It's not just a room full of thousands of students that could care less of one thing I say. But if one person says that they were impacted by it is what motivates me to keep going.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I know my freshman year, I like to complain a lot about things, and I felt very empowered to, like, instead of complaining and saying like, oh, I wish we had this or I wish we did this, just make it happen. Like, if you wish we did it, then like make it so we do it. So that is one thing that keeps me motivated, is like not complaining and instead flipping that into doing something about it. And then also, like, as an RA, getting to see these freshmen come in literally with like clean slate, like so excited about everything. Like, they are so excited. They have no idea what's coming, but building off of that and then keeping it going. Like, gosh, I love it. Like, I love move-in day and everybody shows up and they're like, they just have so much enthusiasm, and I don't want that to end ever. So I want to keep it going as long as it can. And I like definitely get emotions based on the people around me. If everyone around me is excited, then like I'm super excited. And then like the same way, the other way around, if I'm super excited, I want to make everyone around me super excited. So yeah, building off of my own like motivation, making them motivated, and then like being motivated based off of that, yeah, is good. And then just the feeling of empowerment that I had when I was a freshman, like becoming a fellow, it was incredible. And I want that to continue with every single student here, because there's so much you can achieve when you feel empowered to do so.
Yeah, that's amazing. And excitement is super contagious.
I also just want to reference a quote from our trip to India, Katie. Sai Karan from MITS said, how do you stay inspired? You inspire others. So I just want to shout out to him. I think I totally hear that in what you're both saying, that's how you stay motivated, is, you see that excitement in others, and that just keeps you going.
Yeah.
Thank you for
like
sharing
just
that.
Talking about it, I'm like already so excited about it.
I can tell.
Yeah, this conversation will probably motivate the entire rest of my day. So it's like little things, right? Okay, so final closing question is just like, I know that you guys have events coming up this year, but like, what's next for you guys? What's next for this community? Do you have any like final thoughts that you want to share that you haven't yet?
Going back to that whole iteration process. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, already going. Going back to that whole iteration like process that we go through, because of the work that we did last year with the first year students last year, a lot of them have been motivated to do their own thing, start their own clubs, or try and implement their own spaces. And so building that within our campus, allowing them to have the resources after their first year as well, and then continuing that throughout their college experience is something we are really trying to focus on now. So doing that, like with Innovation Week, we're planning a lot earlier. With the TEDx, we're planning a lot earlier this year. So continuing that,
and then also these new events that we have these projects that are being created because of that, trying to re-implement that into our first year experience as well. And that's, I think we're trying to make the community bigger and bigger and change the culture of our school to really not be afraid of entrepreneurship. And like here, everyone is innovative, but as soon as you say the words entrepreneurial, they get kind of like stressed out about it. So changing the stigma around that, slowly we can change the culture. That's what's next here.
Yeah, so for us, like I mentioned, we're kind of starting anew with UIfresh and seeing where that goes. And I'm actually really excited to see how we engage more people in our community as we kind of open it up to them getting involved with us rather than us forcing an activity on everybody. And so I'm excited to see where that goes and to see who we get coming through the doors. This summer, I've been here for half of it, and we've held events in our makerspace that are actually not with current students. They're alumni with high school students, and there seems to be a lot of excitement. I sit in here and someone will come tap on the door, and it's somebody who's here for a tour at Michigan Tech, and they're like, we heard about this space and we wanted to come see it. And so we get them in here, and so there's even excitement about this community outside of just the students that are here at Michigan Tech. It's reaching to the students that might be coming here in the coming years. And so it's really exciting to see this community keep growing. We're getting involved with helping classes redesign their curriculum. Our newest cohort of fellows that went through last fall are planning an innovation week. And so that's going to launch this fall. And so that's going to be really exciting. And we're just trying to create this presence on campus and show people that you can get involved. And like Asya said, it's not so scary when you hear the word entrepreneurship. Because I know for me, when I first joined, it was entrepreneurship. I'm like, I'm not so sure about that. But it's a mindset too. You don't have to, just because you say entrepreneurship, you don't have to go start your own business. It's also a mindset. And so we want to show that and have that maker culture here at Michigan Tech. And so starting with the first years and getting them involved right away allows them to make the most out of their experience here at Tech.
Just to like put a little bit of perspective, my freshman class started out as about 1,000 students. Last year's freshman class was about 900. This year we have over 1,300 students in the freshman class. So it's increased by about 30%. And it's a huge freshman class. Like, we have triple dorm rooms everywhere. And the Engineering Grand Challenges theme learning community moved from a res hall where they had a floor of about 30 students the past 2 years to a floor of 80 students this year. So we're growing. So it's we have to keep up. We're trying to keep up.
That's amazing.
Yeah, for me, it's crazy to think as we go into this UIfresh, and it'll happen next Wednesday for us, or next Thursday for us, that by the end of it, about half the university has gone through. So it's crazy to think that like that many people is who we've actually talked to on campus. And so it's really crazy to think that after 3 years we're already here. So
that gives you chills.
I know. Well, because you have about 1,300 incoming freshmen too at Michigan Tech?
We had 1,300 3 years ago, 1,400 last year. I don't know what the count is this year, but we're growing as well. So
yeah, that's cool.
It's amazing what you can do when you feel empowered.
Yeah, it's so true.
Very
so
true.
true.
I wonder, as a way to close this conversation, if we could all just go around the room and say one word that describes how we're feeling as we are getting ready for the new school year. And I can start. Mine is inspired.
Oh, you can't take that one.
I'll go next so mine isn't stolen. Motivated.
Oh, am I next? Okay, I'm going to say the word that I've been saying then, empowered.
Oh, nice. I'm going to go with elation.
What does that mean?
It means like of great happiness or like excitement, or it's just a fun
elated.
spin on something basic like excitement.
Yes.
Nice, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. New vocab word for the day. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you to everybody who tuned in at this broadcast. If you did or not, we'll make the recording available for everybody. And stay tuned for more information about UIfresh that's coming up and activities that are happening this fall. Thanks, Megan and Asya and Lori, for joining us today. It was good to see everybody.
Adios, friends.